Spectrovision Radio.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Ryan here from Somewhere in the Skies, and today we have a very unique interview for you. We're so happy that we're able to make this happen. Our special guest today is Kristin Fisher. From the front lines of space journalism to the heart of the UFO debate, Kristin has covered it all and lived it. Born into a family of NASA astronauts, and now bridging the worlds of space exploration, UFOs, and consciousness, she joins us fresh off the heels of the Artemis II mission in some of the biggest questions facing humanity today. From Capitol Hill hearings to cosmic wonder, this is a conversation that explores not just what's out there, but what it all means for us down here. This was such a refreshing interview. We covered everything: her coverage of Artemis, her face-to-face interviews with Eric Burlinson, her time as a White House correspondent, and everything in between. We talk space, we talk UFOs. It's all here for you guys, and I really think you're gonna enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to all of you who have rated and reviewed the podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you haven't, please go over and do that right now. Every rating, every review helps us gain visibility, find new listeners, find more curious minds. So head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and rate and review the podcast there. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment under this interview. Let us know what you thought of it, and I would certainly appreciate that. But for now, let's get to our interview with Kristin Fisher.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what they are, but I know it's something, and I know that we're being lied to, and I know that there's been a cover-up.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Kristin, welcome for the very first time to Somewhere in the Skies, and you are just all over the place. I want to talk to you about everything space, UFOs. You literally were just in a press conference with the astronauts from Artemis, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome to the show.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me. I am a fan, and it's an honor.
Thank you, first of all. That's very kind. And right back at you. I've been watching your YouTube channel ever since you started it, actually, The Endless Void, which we're going to get to later in the show here. But for our guests who may not be familiar with your work, we always have to start with that Peter Parker getting bitten by the spider. Like, what's your origin story? How did you get interested?
The origin story.
Origin. It sounds so mysterious, but
It does. It does.
Space exploration.
It's,
How'd that all start?
So I was born into it. I was literally born into a world where both of my parents were NASA astronauts. My mom was in the very first class of civilian astronauts, that class of 1978 with the first women and the first military test pilots that were selected into the astronaut corps. And then my dad was selected 2 years later, and then I was born. And then my mom flew into space in 1984 when I was just, 14, 15 months old, and my dad flew about a year later. So it's the world I was born into, and I just completely took it all for granted. I did not care about space at all. I did not think it was cool. I loved my parents. I was proud of them. But, especially when you become a teenager, I think anytime both of your parents do the same thing, you're like, I'm going to do something else. And so that's what I did. So it took me many years. I had to grow up and move away from home and become an adult to be like, wow, I had such a cool childhood. And so I've really come back to it now. But I think it was always there. It was just always it was in my blood, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's name your parents too, if you don't mind.
Sure. Dr. Anna Lee Fisher. She was in the same class as Sally Ride. She was the first mother in space, because of me, I like to say. And my dad is Dr. Bill Fisher.
Okay.
And they're both medical doctors. So that was kind of their origin story. They were emergency room physicians, and they were selected by NASA to serve as mission specialists and also doctors on space shuttle missions. And they both flew one time.
Awesome. And you did post a really emotional video on your YouTube channel about your parents, and oh my gosh, I was like in tears by the end of watching that. It was so cool to kind of see like how that re-sparked your interest in the topic.
I was in tears editing it. I went through about 25 hours worth of home videos because my parents, they were aware of the risks. They knew, my mom in particular knew that she could fly into space when she was leaving behind a little baby on Earth, and that I may never see her again. And so in the year before her space flight, my dad and my mom took about 25 hours worth of home videos. And so to make that video, I was going through all sorts of, old home videos, and man, it took me a while to do. I found it very emotional in a way that I don't think I'd let myself really process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even the president had spoken to your mom.
Everyone always asked me if I was going to be an astronaut too, including President Ronald Reagan.
Anna, I couldn't help but wonder if you'd recommend a career as an astronaut to your daughter, Kristin.
Oh, that I would, Mr. President, and I'm going to recommend it to her highly.
It was really cool. And I would agree, at the time you're like, oh, mom, dad, put the camera away, like this, that. But then when you look back on it now, I'm so happy that my parents like documented these pivotal moments in their lives to kind of, the older you get, the more you appreciate what they went through. Like you said, your mom and dad I hate to say it, and with these astronauts with Artemis that we're about to talk about, like the risk is so high, they don't know if they're ever going to come back to their family. So there's probably so much mental, emotional, physical preparation for something like that, I would imagine.
I think it's really important, though, that we talk about the risk. And I know we're going to get into the Artemis astronauts in a minute, but I've been so encouraged that they have been talking more about the risk, because it's what we as humans need to do to honor their potential sacrifice. Be aware of the fact that they're conscious of this. They're talking to their families about it. We don't need to kind of brush this under the rug. This is the cost of human exploration. And if they're okay with it, I think it's up to the rest of us humans to make our peace with it too. And just one more point on the sort of like taking it all for granted when you're a little kid and you have to grow up to appreciate things. I used to get so embarrassed of how my mom in particular would watch shuttle launches. I mean, she would scream, cheer, throw her arm, woohoo, go, Godspeed. I'd be like, oh my God, Mom, what are you doing? Yeah. And then I had a complete full circle moment. I took my 8-year-old daughter to the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and we saw the newly renovated moon room where you have the, Buzz Aldrin's the suit that he walked on the moon in, and the command module. And I walked in and I just looked and I went, man, like, I think I said, like, holy shit, and my daughter looked at me and she was like, oh, Mom. And I said it in front of people. She was like, Mom, like, get it together. Like, you can't say that. And then she just looked up at it for a minute and she goes, I just don't see what the big deal is. Wow. So, what? It all comes full circle, right?
It does. And she'll have that moment too. I'm sure she will have that moment. Yeah. In her own time. But that's what it's about. It's seeing your parents as human as possible. That you will one day appreciate this, and it's cool. That's cool that you had that full circle moment. I want to rewind just a little bit before we get to like Artemis and all the work you've done with that. But tell us a little about your work before, there was like space journalism and all that. You were an Emmy award winner. Don't think I wasn't gonna bring that up, but like what has your work been throughout the years in terms of that? Give us your resume, I guess.
It's so funny when I look back on it now, because I ended up going into one of the most terrestrial, earthbound, chaos-filled beats imaginable, right? Politics, and not just any politics, but I was a White House correspondent for Fox News during the first Trump administration. And I mean, talk about being just like in the lion's den. I mean, it does not get more from a, from a journalist's perspective, I think more intense than that. And I'm so grateful for the experience. Like I learned a ton. I had some moments where it was like, I can't believe this is real life, that this is happening to me, that I'm here, that I'm witnessing this. But I just started, I knew very early on that this was not what I wanted to do. I'm very much an optimistic person. I want to do things to uplift humanity. And at some point, politics just felt like it was just dragging people down. And, in the first Trump administration, that was when President Trump first announced the Artemis program. It was when he launched the Space Force. And so all of a sudden I found myself, in my role as a White House correspondent, but suddenly really getting to start to cover some space at the White House. And the more I covered it, the more I was like, ooh, this feels good. This feels really fun. And so when my contract came up, I decided that I wanted to get out of politics and cover space full time. And so I made a pretty big push to a variety of mainstream legacy media news organizations. And CNN was the one that let me do it full time. So I then became a space correspondent at CNN for about 4 years. And space and defense, covered Space Force, Pentagon, anything and everything that happens in commercial space, NASA, and of course, Capitol Hill too. And that was my introduction really to the UFO and UAP beat, was when I started covering those very first hearings on Capitol Hill.
Right. And we'll get to that because I know you were there. You were in the room where it happened. I won't start singing Hamilton, guys. I promise. Talking about space and exploration and all that. Again, we're leading up to Artemis because it is the most current thing going on in the space exploration world. We live stream the entire launch and flyby here right on the channel. Not the touchdown. I was asleep, unfortunately. I'm in the UK, so it was like 2 in the morning. Splashdown.
It's a splashdown, not a touchdown.
This is the Super Bowl, Ryan. Yeah, sorry. Or touchdown. No, that's when they land on the moon, right? Like when they actually put feet
when they
on
land on the moon, they will. No, you're right. A touchdown.
Yeah.
It's not just the Super Bowl.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
This was just a splashdown.
Got it. Yeah, I was definitely asleep for it, unfortunately, but it went as textbook as it comes, from what I've heard, which is awesome. But before Artemis, what are some of those most memorable moments you've had in covering the space exploration beat? People you've interviewed.
Oh man.
Yeah, does anything really stick out for you right now in terms of that?
The last space shuttle launch was really sad. Being there for that when there was not a replacement plan in place. No successor to the shuttle was ready. My mom was crying. A lot of other NASA astronauts were crying. It was a very sad, emotional moment, which is why what's happening right now, I think I appreciate it even more. Gosh, I was covering the beginning of the billionaire space race, so to speak. I was there for the moment Jeff Bezos flew into space, the moment Richard Branson flew into space. Those were just kind of neat moments that I'd been watching build for many years, and to get to be there in person to witness this, regardless of what you think about, space tourism, so to speak, was a really neat moment. I think the moment I'm probably most proud of, though, was when I was in the White House briefing room, maybe 10 days into the Biden administration. And this was a moment when nobody knew if the Artemis program would continue. And obviously, one of the biggest issues with NASA and space exploration in the United States is that they can set a goal, a target, an objective, but a new administration comes in, a new Congress, and they change the target, cancel the program. That's happened time and time again. And so one of the big questions when Biden came in was, is he going to cancel Artemis?
Right.
And I asked the White House press secretary at the time, Jen Psaki, what the Biden administration was going to do very early on. And the next day, she said she didn't know anything about it, didn't know much about it. And the next day got back to me and in the briefing said that the Biden administration had made the decision to retain the Artemis program. And I knew it was having an impact, but I didn't realize until the next day, the NASA administrator at the time gave me a call and said, Kristin, I have to thank you because we think you just saved Artemis. And I'm not saying that I fully think that I single-handedly saved the Artemis program, but I do think that by putting pressure on the Biden administration very early on, before the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, can get in and try to get their claws into the program and, say that it's not worth the cost. It really shows you the power of one question and the power of the right journalist in the room asking the right people the right questions at the right time. And so I've been thinking a lot about that lately, and that's one of my favorite moments.
Wow, that's amazing. And again, like, I think that pressure, you're right. That's what journalists do. Like, you're there to kind of serve the public and get information out to the public. And it takes pressure sometimes. It's the reason we've had 3 congressional UFO hearings, because that pressure was put on Congress to finally look at this topic seriously, because you have these people saying, hey, there's some shady stuff going on with like UFO technology and there's no oversight. Like, we should probably look into that. And of course, us in the UFO field are like, yeah, we've known this forever. Did we really? Did we really? I don't know, but we can say that we did. But yeah, it's that pressure is important. And yeah, I think you should be proud of that. Like, that could have been a huge factor in something like that. And now look at what just happened like a week and a half ago. It's crazy.
It's been such a joy to watch, after all this time, all the years, to see it actually fly and be successful. Man, I've had a shit-eating grin on my face like for a week now. And I had nothing to do with it except for like trying to get other people excited about it. Like, I'm not an engineer on the mission. I didn't go, but it's like humanity. Yeah. Like we're doing, it does feel like we're doing this together. As cheesy as it sounds, like it means something to me, and I think it means something to other people as well.
Yep, absolutely. I think we are living in a new kind of a revolution when it comes to that, and I think this mission really put that into people's minds, young minds too, of like what can be done. Seeing the first like woman to go do a flyby mission, to see the first African American, a Canadian up there. Like, you're right. It is a crew. And I know the astronauts talked a lot about that, which we will dissect too. But let's just go there. Let's go to Artemis. Maybe walk us
Let's
through,
do it.
yeah, your journey through all that as a journalist, as the child of astronauts, as someone who's trying to know how exciting these things are. Like, what was your journey from like when they first announced it all through the turmoil and then up to this Artemis II mission?
Well, it's been a journey both for the crew, obviously, and for me too, in that it was right during the time of the Artemis II crew selection to the moment they flew, around that same time frame that I decided to make the jump from mainstream legacy media into the independent world. And so there's been a lot of changes in the Artemis program and in my own life, and it's kind of had its ups and downs. But to see where it has, it all feels worth it now. There were moments when I wasn't sure if we would get here. But to go back to the beginning, I think that we have been, as a species, as a country, have been waiting for this moment to have humans return to deep space for over half a century. And so when President Trump first announced this program, I think it was 2019, I was super excited. And to then have the crew announced and to have it be this crew, Reed Weissman or Victor Glover was my mom's office mate at one point in time. So was Christina. So these are people that I had been in my life for a while, and I was so thrilled that they had been the 4 that were selected. I could not imagine, and still can't imagine, a better crew to go on this mission. And I think the rest of the world has kind of had a chance to get to know them and fall in love with them too. So real initial excitement about who the crew was when they were announced. Then, of course, you have the delays and the scheduling issues, but we knew that would happen. I knew that would happen. I think for a lot of people who don't follow this as closely, they perhaps were more frustrated by the delays than people who follow this were. I think the space journalists were a very jaded bunch, we're optimistic, but when it comes to sticking to a schedule, we're like,
Welcome
really?
to my life
2024
too.
is when you're gonna launch. Come on.
Yeah.
So it actually launched sooner than I was expecting, if I'm totally honest. And then, so Artemis 1, I was there. In terms of other space moments and space highlights for me, being there in person for the first launch of Artemis 1 at night, 4 miles away from the launch pad, it was hands down the most visually spectacular and physically moving launch that I've ever seen. In terms of sheer vibrations that your body felt. I was just, I was on an adrenaline high for days after that. You get to see truly the whole sky go from day to night. So that was incredibly cool. And then just to now be here, what is it, 3 years later, watching Artemis II fly, it's just, I had it was scary. There were moments of real fear for these astronauts, for the crew. There was real risk to this mission. And as I said, I'm feeling such a high now that it was so successful, and that they're now safely back down on Earth. I can't imagine what they're feeling.
Right. Or their families. And the other thing people forget is the hundreds and hundreds of people that make these things happen, down to the people building the craft. My uncle actually used to work on
Really?
parts of the NASA spacecraft back in the 70s, 80s. And you don't think about that. Everything, down to the barista at the NASA headquarters, at the coffee shop, everyone is a part of this crew and makes these things happen. And I think that's why someone like me, I was biting my nails during that launch, because it's not just those 4 astronauts. It's literally everyone who spent the last 3 years preparing for this mission, right?
And so much harder for the families that are left behind on Earth than the astronauts that go into space. Everybody who either is an astronaut or the family member of an astronaut will tell you that. The other thing I've really thought a lot about is, in the lead up to this mission, and that the video that I made that we were just talking about at the beginning of this podcast, I was really worried that people weren't going to care. Did you know that NASA's about to send astronauts back to the moon?
No.
That's
I had
really
no
cool.
idea.
Yeah, I had no idea. Does that interest you?
No, not really.
I don't know. I think maybe it's just lost its luster a little bit since the 1960s, when it was new and exciting.
I was really worried that this moment would come and people would be too distracted by, real important issues. The war in Iran, the economy, Epstein, a million other things, there are real and valid issues to be distracted by. I just really hoped that this was going to penetrate the mainstream, but I had my real doubts, the jaded, pessimistic journalist, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel so much relief. I feel like my faith in humanity has been restored to see that this kind of a feel-good story did resonate and did penetrate, even in 2026 when you have a multitude of options in terms of where to get your content from.
For sure, and that argument will always be there. There's things here on Earth we should be focusing on and putting resources into, but at the same time, like, there's always things going on Earth, and that is not to take away from the very important things going on the planet right now. But people have to also realize NASA isn't just about like going out into space. We had Dr. Paula Bontempi on the show in the past. She's a NASA oceanographer. She was a part of the NASA UAP study group. And we barely talked about UFOs in space. It was all about the weird anomalous stuff in our oceans, because NASA does that too. They do weather things. Like, NASA is such a big thing. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that. But back to your point, like, this gave me so much faith in humanity again, like it did for you. And it was so inspiring. And everyone's like, why are we going to the moon? It's like, that's not what it's about. It's looking towards the future with each mission and what we could do and what is possible. And, while that's cool, I think you're right. It's literally the impact that this big event that the entire world watched play out of human ingenuity, more importantly, I guess, American ingenuity, if you want to get a little bit more patriotic with it, but a beautiful moment in time.
But it is actually a very international moment in the sense that
For sure.
There was a Canadian astronaut on board, and there's the European service module, which is actually the Orion spacecraft's whole life support systems, and to me, as somebody who's, just pro team humanity, right? And not just the United States, that's the big difference about the Artemis program when you compare it to Apollo. Apollo was all about the United States, flags and footprints. We beat Russia. This is truly much more international in terms of the 60 partners that NASA has signed on to the Artemis Accords. And, of course, the United States is in a space race with China. I know a lot of people hate that phrase, space race, but it's what the politicians are saying, you know? So I feel good about this because there are representatives from all of us in Artemis, unlike there was in Apollo.
Right. And a little competition is not bad. That's why there's always a Starbucks next to a Dunkin' Donuts, and like you make each other better in some ways.
Absolutely. To be very clear, that's, a lot of people give the politicians a hard time for saying the phrase space race, but that's what's needed to get the bucks to fund this right now. Until the American public really starts to give a shit about space and say, yes, this is where I want my taxpayer dollars going. The other way you do that is by pointing to the competition and your adversaries. And so, yeah, I'm pro competition. If that's what it takes to get to the moon and build a base quickly, yeah, we're in a space race.
We're in a space race, yeah, for sure. Okay, let's whiplash this conversation and turn to UFOs. You ready? Boom.
Okay.
Hey guys, Ryan Sprague here from Somewhere in the Skies. The podcast has always been and always will be completely free for you to listen to. But creating it every week takes a lot of time, research, and resources. And to be honest, it's just never been free for me to create. That's why we built a few simple ways for you to help support the show and keep it going strong. You can join us over on Patreon or through Apple Premium. Both offer the same awesome perks. Ad-free episodes, early access to new content, exclusive bonus shows, and even priority to ask our guests your listener questions. It's a quick and easy way to support what we do for just a few bucks a month. And right now, you can even try Patreon for free for a week to see if it's right for you. To learn more and to join, head over to patreon.com/somewhereskies. That's patreon.com/somewhereskies. Or hit that subscribe button right at the top of your Apple Podcast feed. Thank you so much for listening, for supporting, and as always, keep looking up.
We're marrying the two things, that we're
Yes.
merging the two things that I love to cover the most.
I love it. I love it. And again, we're going to link to your channel because that's kind of where I got a lot of these UFO questions, the videos and the people that you've sat down with face to face and had these UAP conversations with. But what kind of besides like space exploration, what got you interested in UFOs, UAP, aliens? Was that always there? Or?
I definitely came to it a little bit later than you might think. I was always kind of interested, but I never really did my homework, did my due diligence, really dug into it until that very first UFO hearing on Capitol Hill. I was a space correspondent for CNN at the time, and I went and covered it. And I just remember listening to those military test pilots testify. And again, I was like, holy shit, these are real people testifying under oath. They have better vision than you or me. Like, this is literally the criteria to be a test pilot, is that you have great vision. And from that moment on, I was hooked.
I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space.
I started doing my own homework and, watching all the documentaries, reading the books, doing the things that I think many people start to do when they first begin to go down this path. And I found that while, I'm always going to have, I think like I said, my DNA and my blood is kind of in human space exploration. Increasingly, I find myself most fascinated by UFOs and UAPs. And yet and this is kind of something we talked about earlier, I don't feel like I should have to choose. Early on, somebody was like, oh, what's your channel going to be about? And I was like, I'd like to do space exploration and UFOs and UAPs and like consciousness and some deeper philosophical questions. Right. And somebody was like, that's never going to work. Like, those are all very different things. But, and probably better than anyone that they are different audiences a lot of times. The space exploration crowd and the UFO, UAP crowd, consciousness, spirituality, all that. But I would like to bring them all together, and those are my areas of interest, and I do think they intersect. I do think there is a deep connection between all three of those topics, and that is what I intend to explore on The Endless Void.
As you should. Yeah. I mean, bridging those gaps is so important. I mean, like I said, I'm having you on today. I've had space historians, NASA people. I've had astrophysicists on the show. I know you spoke to Avi Loeb. He's been on the show a couple times at this point. Like, there's a overlap of these things, and there has to be. If we're in all these different camps, like, we're never going to get all the answers. Like, we got to, become the Breakfast Club of this planet.
That's a great way of putting it. There is an overlap, but as you know, there's a bit of a hesitancy. I think certainly in the space exploration world, among, dare I say, astronauts, my parents included, to really go there on UFOs and UAPs. Everybody always asks me, what do your parents
I was just
think
going to
about
ask
UFOs,
you. Yeah, what are their thoughts on it? Yeah.
It's they're the biggest skeptics. Okay. And a lot of, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I have found that to be the case with quite a few astronauts. And I think part of it comes from the fact that there's this like, oh, I went to space and I didn't see anything. So a bit of a personal experience.
Right.
But yeah, I have been, I think, again, as everybody starts to go down their own journey, investigating and doing their own research on UFOs. At some point you reach the stage of like, well, I got to share this. I got to share what I've learned with everybody. And some people are receptive to it and some people are not. And I've had many great conversations with my parents about it, but they remain among my more skeptical friends and family members.
Totally fair. Yeah, and I mean, again, they've been in space. I'm not gonna like be like, oh, so you're the expert now? No,
exactly. It's hard to fight. It's hard to argue that point. It's like, ooh, like you got me. Like, what am I going to say to that? Like,
Yeah.
got me.
Right. Now, there are those astronauts who, and we will talk about them in a little bit here as we delve into the consciousness aspect. Another really cool video that you've put out. But let's talk about kind of your specific coverage of UAP. Like you said, you went to that congressional hearing. You saw the pilots testify. You saw David Grusch, I would assume, the intelligence officer who said there's these legacy UFO programs. What do you make of that whole thing? These shadowy government projects that are like working on downed UFOs. Had you ever heard of anything like that before the hearing?
Yes. I mean, I'd heard about, programs to reverse engineer advanced alien technology. But until the moment where David Grusch said what he did about non-human biologics, for me, that was the phrase. I was on maternity leave at the time. And I watched that hearing at home with my newborn son. And I heard him say non-human biologics. And that was another moment where I was like, what? Like, wow. And I think that moment for a lot of people really started to change things. And so when you ask about, the kind of coverage that I do and what I'm kind of drawn to in UFO and UAP coverage, I try to think about how best can I help the cause, whatever the cause may be, right? And I think
you got me. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Who knows? But the cause is truth, right?
For sure.
The cause is truth. Whatever that is, that's I think at its purest form, the cause is truth and just humanity having a right to know whatever the truth is. And not having a government keep it from them. And I think at a bare minimum, we can all agree that whatever it is, the U.S. government is keeping something from the American people on this topic. I mean, that is quite obvious at this point.
Hey, Nate.
Good to see you. Happy hearing day.
Are we going to get in no problem?
I think so.
Should we be going with this first batch or can we wait? Go with the first batch? Okay. So we weren't allowed to film how we got in, but I got in. All right, let's go in.
Good morning and welcome to the hearing regarding UAP disclosures.
Are any of you willing to name specific gatekeepers within the root cell of the UAP-SAP Federation?
You mean specific people and contractors that have dealt with us and kept the secret?
Specific individuals.
Well, one of them was named Dr. James Ryder at Lockheed.
And so the way I try to help get to that truth is by doing what I think I can do best, which is I have access to a lot of figures in the mainstream world because of my history in mainstream legacy media. And so I have found that if I approach these individuals, be them, members of Congress or people in the UFO community, and try to speak to them in a way that bridges the gap between the asking the questions that people in the UFO community really want answered, but at the same time speaking in a way that the normies, the people who are not well versed into this would understand. That's really what I'm trying to do here, is bridge that gap and make people who are turned off by this topic because they think it's just kooky and crazy, try to get them to open their brains a bit and be like, maybe I should give this a second look. And so that's kind of how I feel like I've been able to, how I'm trying to make the most difference. And of course, there's other people that do this incredibly well, Ross, and, there's a whole host of people, but, I live in DC. I've got access to these people. So that's the way I've kind of thought about a lot of the stories I want to cover and how I approach them, going to these UFO hearings and giving people a behind the scenes view of what it's really like to be there, and not just clipping the short sound bites. And that was something that drove me nuts about being in mainstream legacy media, was just how soundbite driven it is, and to have the creative freedom to go long and really let something breathe and have the nuance. That has been really one of my greatest joys in independent journalist land.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and it's so vitally important, especially with this topic, because you will see legacy media doing the same sound bites, same headlines. And I understand to an extent, like it's got to grab you. Like, we got to get people to read this, click that, this, that. Like, but then when you stretch out and have the actual conversation, that's so important. And I'm glad you get to do that on your own channel. And we thank you for that. You are kind of our insider now for a lot of people out there, especially with the hearings, the congressional members. But the one I want to talk about first with you, let's break down a couple of these videos that you've done a little bit. I mean, obviously people should go watch them. But the first one I want to bring up is probably one of the more current ones. And that was when you were the first person to ask Pete Hegseth about this crazy Trump, Obama, aliens are real, declassifying files saga. You were the one who got to ask the first question of the literal leader of the Department of War right now.
This is no longer fringe. I mean, disclosure is now being discussed publicly at the highest levels of the U.S. government. In fact, we talked about it on the flight over. I asked a senior War Department official if the Pentagon had started the process of identifying and releasing the UFO files, and he said yes. The Secretary of War is just about to walk out of the motorcade. 3 days ago, President Trump directed you to begin the process of identifying and releasing the UFO and UAP files. I mean, did you ever think that you would be the Secretary of War in charge of potentially declassifying extraterrestrial life to the American people and the world?
I did not have that on my bingo card at all.
And are you prepared to do that now?
Of course. I mean, we've got our people working on it right now. I don't want to oversell how much time it will take. Right? We're digging in. We're going to be in full compliance with that executive order, eager to provide that for the president. So there'll be more coming on that as far as the process of what we'll do.
And what sort of time frame? Do you have any sense for how long this is going to take?
I don't have a time frame for you yet, but stand by. We'll get it for you.
And do you think aliens are real?
What?
Do you think aliens exist? Do you think they're real?
I get to do the review and find out along with you. One more?
One more. Mr. Secretary, the Director of National Intelligence said today that her office was going to begin the process of declassifying reports on extraterrestrial and alien life. I'm going back to these types of questions because the American people have wanted to know the answer to these questions for a very long time. And so I'm just curious if you think that, one, if this is the beginning of disclosure for the American people and the world, and two, if the Pentagon is actually prepared to start declassifying some of these things that might really shed some answers on this instead of keeping it secret.
We would love to. We'll work with the DNI, as we always do. I'm heartened to hear that she's doing that. President Trump has been committed to disclosure on lots of levels, and he's made it clear that he wants answers on this. He's given us a responsibility to do it. We're going to be a part of delivering that. It'll be a deliberative process. We want to make sure expectations are going to be high, right? I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, so we're going to take a little time to make sure we assess what this should look like and deliver for the president, for the American people.
Tell us how that all came about.
That was such a crazy day. It was 24 hours after Trump had said, I put that post on Truth Social and said, I'm ordering, the Department of War to begin the process of releasing and identifying all the UFO files. 24 hours after he posted that, I get this email that said, hot exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, short notice, something like that. It looked like spam. I didn't even click on it. And then I got another one, and it was Pete Hegseth's office inviting me on a trip to go visit some space companies out in Colorado. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I was like, oh, they're inviting me. We're going to go to Area 51. I mean, I
blindfold you, bring you out on the
I was like, this is it. Of course it was not that. I later learned we were visiting two very cool space companies in Colorado, but this was not the disclosure event that I initially thought or hoped it might be. So ended up basically, flying on his plane with a few other journalists for the day. And I had made it very clear to his press team that I was here to talk about UFOs. I wanted to ask him, was he going to follow Trump's order, where we were in that? Was Aero going to lead it? All those things. And so his team knew that, but I don't know if they ever relayed that to him, to Pete. And so I kind of assumed they had, but now in hindsight, I don't think they did. And Secretary Hegseth and I go way back, actually. He was the very first person I ever anchored a show on Fox News with.
Oh, wow.
Like over a decade ago, we anchored a 5 a.m. show together for a few days and just filling in. And so I know him, like we go way back, and this was going to be my first time seeing him in a while. And so there was this moment between us when it came time and they pulled us over to ask him questions at the very last minute where he was like, hey, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. There were these pleasantries. And then I was like, okay, so aliens. And he looked at me like, what?
Really? This is what we're doing?
I was like,
okay.
And I was like, yeah. And then he came back to me like, I'm going to give you, Kristin, I'll go back to you for the last question. And I was like, yeah. And so aliens again. And I think he was a bit like surprised.
Yeah.
But that is a perfect example of when you have the opportunity and you are a journalist, that is your duty to ask the question, I think, that will get the answers that people want the most, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. And it was uncomfortable for me because I knew that I had a sense he hadn't been briefed on this, that I was going to ask him this. I had a sense that, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it, came across to me. And I had a sense that it wasn't, perhaps the thing that he wanted to be talking about the most, but it's in those moments where I think it's most important to just put your own discomfort, your nerves, sometimes your fear aside and ask the question that needs to be asked in order for you to get the answer that best serves the ultimate goal, which is truth.
Well, and two, like, we watch these White House press briefings and things like that, and like these boilerplate answers. The public is smarter than that. We know these things are prepared ahead of time, the question and answer, sometimes, not all the time, obviously. But I think it's so important to keep these people on their toes too, because you're going to get kind of the raw, unfiltered response. And I mean, his response was pretty level-headed. He said, yep, president said it, we're going to look into it, don't have a timetable, but we're on it. Obviously we're like, oh my god, it's happening, but
right.
Like, at the end of the day, like, these things take time and all that. Who knows what's actually going to come of any of it? But what did you take from his response?
I mean, there's what I took from it then and what I take from it now.
Okay.
In the moment, it sounds very encouraging, right? Since then, not all that much has happened, right? And so I feel like on this topic in particular, and there's other topics too, but man, like, the UFO community and the advocates for disclosure have been pushing for this for decades. And I think of all the topics, this is the one where you have to be relentless. You have to keep holding the people in power accountable, and you have to keep asking the questions in order to get anything done. So I was really encouraged when he said what he did, but you probably know this better than I do, since your podcast has been around much longer than mine, but how many times in the UFO community have we gotten our hopes up?
Oh,
You know, how many times?
Talk about jaded. Like our
I
hearts are
know. I
broken
know.
almost on a daily basis for sure when it comes
Yeah.
to this topic. But you're right. Yeah. Like it's that pressure. Like we mentioned earlier, we got to keep putting it on people. It's what got us to space. It's what got us to, where we are with the whole Epstein thing. Like if these people didn't speak up, we would get no truth when it came to any of these topics. That goes for everything. The JFK files, if you're like a conspiracy JFK person, it's like we did get some stuff on that new stuff. So you're right. Like that pressure is so important. I'm so happy you were able to do that.
Where do you fall
Yeah.
now on the optimism spectrum? I'm curious.
For sure. I mean, if we're talking today, what is it? April 17th, April 14th, we were supposed to get what Representative Anna Paulina Luna said were 46 UAP videos that have never
Yeah.
seen the light of day, like military grade UFO videos, like the ones we've been watching for the past 8-9 years now. And that didn't happen. And it went right back up the rung to Pete Hegseth. It was his responsibility. It didn't happen. So they're now working together to make sure that happens, and that's because she went out into the press and said, "Hey, deadline's gone. Like, what's going on? We demanded these. You need to get." So it does take pressure. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
I've kind of learned to temper my expectations when it comes to
Yeah.
UFOs, the government, and stuff like that.
So I've really been into this and doing this since 2022, right?
Yeah.
So 4 years. I've already experienced what feels like so many highs and lows, and then I think about the George Knapps of the world and
Yeah.
the Chris Mellons and all the people who've been doing this forever, and I'm like, oh man, like talk about the numbness, the jaded. Like I can only imagine, right?
Yeah, you kind of you get used to it. You get calloused over. But there's a reason I'm still doing this podcast 10 years
Yeah.
later. I firmly believe there's a core phenomenon happening when it comes to UFOs. What they are, I don't know. I don't pretend to know what UFOs are, aren't. There's probably 100 million different explanations for all of them. But at the end of the day, you're right. It's about finding the truth. And if we feel that the government knows something, they should tell us. My fear
Yeah.
is that they actually don't know anything and they're covering up that fact instead. And that's almost more troubling, that like they don't have control of our skies. These things are flying in and out with impunity, and we don't know what they are, where they come from, why they're here, any of that. So I don't know, Kristin. Like it's a minefield. This topic always has been. But I appreciate that people like George Knapp, yourself, documentary filmmakers like James Fox, that they're doing what they're doing to like expose what truth there might be and what the government might know about it. But who am I? Like I do a podcast. I'm
Yeah.
not in these rooms, in these skiffs with these people. I'm not learning the things congressional members are learning. And that's a problem too. Like we should know those things.
It's also an intimidating field, I think, to people who are trying to follow this, who may not know a lot about it. How do you know who to trust? How do you know what's true, what's not true? Is this a psyop? Is it not? Like all that. It's intimidating for people who have not been following this for a while. And so how do you lower that barrier to entry? That's something that I think about a lot in my coverage.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, we don't want to alienate people. I hate using that pun, but it's true. Like you gotta, it's baby steps. Like we've come a long way. The government says UFOs are real. That's more than we've gotten in 70 plus years. So yeah, I think we're on our way. The other person I wanted to talk about with you is Eric Burlinson. You sat down face to face with him. You had a conversation.
We're focused on trying to get people that have got firsthand taxpayer to figure out what is going on.
Again, this is the guy knocking on the doors of
Yep.
like aerospace companies, these places that supposedly
Yep.
house UFOs. What do you make of all of that?
I was so impressed with Eric Burleson. So often you go to Capitol Hill and you sit down with these politicians and you just feel the talking points that they are spitting out at you. You know, it just feels so canned.
Yeah.
They're not even answering your questions. I had a real conversation. It didn't feel forced. I barely even used notes, you know, I did my homework, but it was just a real conversation. And I'm sure you appreciate this as a podcast host. Those moments, those interviews are just the best. And so I just appreciated that he was like, he's an important congressman, but also just a real dude, you know, who had questions just like everybody else. And he wasn't afraid to go into the more taboo topics, which is, you know, I'd like to see more members of Congress do that. But, you know, he went into, you know, he tried his best to, really talk about quantum physics, quantum entanglement. And I'm not saying he's done so many podcast interviews since then that none of this is all that new anymore. But, he's talking about angels and he's talking about all the different things that he really went there in terms of what could these things be, interdimensional. And it was just refreshing. And so I'd love to do more of that and to see what he's doing now and what he's done since we sat down and had that interview. It's just, you know, as somebody who's interested and invested in this topic, you want a lot more Eric Burlesons on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely. Again, yeah. And like, I would wonder if his thoughts or theories have changed after visiting these locations and stuff. Well, I know it won't be the last time you interview him. So that'll be really cool to see you talk to him again. Avi Loeb.
On 3i Atlas, I didn't contact the media. I just wrote a few papers and then it became viral.
But Avi, you are a professor, an esteemed professor at Harvard. When you speak about such matters, people listen. I mean, surely you would know that that would be picked up in the media.
I didn't expect it to be so big.
You've said that you think there's a 40% chance that this mysterious interstellar object, 3i Atlas, a 40% chance that it's alien technology. Do you still stand by those odds?
So far, it could go down to 0 or 100% once we get more data. Science is fun because if you allow yourself to learn, you might realize that you didn't expect. Nature might be far more imaginative than Hollywood scripts on aliens. And I very much look forward to finding out what this new object, 3i Atlas, is.
But so far on this day,
yes,
August 24th, 2025, you put the odds at 40% that it's alien tech.
I do.
Talk about mixing, kind of astrophysics, space with UFOs. What do you make of this guy and his like crazy crusade he's been on with these interstellar objects?
Avi's a fascinating character, and I'll be the first to raise my hand and admit that I went in there super skeptical. I mean, I really try to not be confrontational. Like, I really try to just go in, ask hard questions and be pointed, but I really do try to approach my interviews with no bias. But I will admit, I went in with one with Avi Loeb. He was trashing NASA scientists, trashing what I thought was data from, very highly disputed he was trashing data from things like the Hubble Space Telescope and
SETI, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I was just, so I kind of went in like, who is that? What? Like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, But then, once again, the power of nuanced, long-form conversations, I sat down with him in his home for over an hour, and when you take him out of the sound bites and out of the 5-minute, 7-minute long clips that you're allotted on, most mainstream legacy news media platforms, I thought he made a really compelling case. And like we were talking about with headlines, it's what he's saying is, statistically speaking, this is not an interstellar vehicle, right? Like percentage-wise, the chance of this, this is not an alien spacecraft.
Right.
Statistically speaking, that's not the greatest odds of what this is. But it is a chance, and it's a chance that we should explore objectively as scientists. And the case he made to me for just good old-fashioned science and approaching science through a very objective lens, he won me over. Now, I do think he knows what he's doing when he, posts some of these. He knows he's incredibly smart, and he knows I think when he posts something, with a salacious line, that's the line that every headline maker is going to put in quotes, but whose fault is that? Is that Avi's fault, or is that the media's fault and the headline writer's fault? So I think it's a win-win situation for both. Avi gets his message out, and these mainstream media news organizations get the clicks that they wanted. But when you really listen to what Avi's saying, I think he makes great points.
Yeah, and again, like no matter what you think of Avi Loeb's theories, he does say these are just theories. I'm not saying this for sure, but like someone has to ask those ridiculous questions because they're going to be right at least once throughout history.
Exactly.
So yeah, I always, I had him on and he said, someone needs to step on the landmines. And he's right, because then other scientists will be like, maybe I should kind of look into that a little bit too. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, why can't we have these theoretical conversations that don't really, that's actually a huge part of the reason why I wanted to launch The Endless Void. And I'm sure it's what draws you to Somewhere in the Skies as well, is why do we have to have all the answers? I felt like a lot of times if I was going to do a story, you have to like package it all up in a nice little bow and give the viewer, the reader, like this, and this is the answer. We, especially on this topic, let's be okay with the uncertain. Let's wallow in that uncertainty and get a lot more comfortable with it, as opposed to being in this day and age where we feel like we've got to just pretend like we have the answer to everything when we clearly don't.
Exactly. Yeah. Honestly, would life be worth living if we knew all the answers? I don't know, but like, I love the journey. I love the mystery and chasing it. And that's what's kept me going. Okay. So to kind of wrap things up, Kristin, I don't want to take too much of your time. I do have a few listener questions, if that's cool.
Go for it.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's do it. I got time.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Let me see. This one comes from Tanya on Patreon. Our patrons get like priority, so she went right to the front of the line with this one. She said, at NASA's Artemis II press conference, you referenced Edgar Mitchell's transformative experience returning from the moon and asked the astronauts if they felt a similar sense of connectedness or a shift in consciousness. What are your thoughts on Mitchell's experience, and how do you view consciousness in terms of like this universal connectedness? That was a cool video.
So good. Yeah. And a great question, Tanya. Kristin Fisher with The Endless Void, and welcome home. It's been such a joy watching how much this mission has gotten people so excited about space. My question's a little bit deep, so bear with me. When Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell was returning from the moon, he had an experience so profound that when he returned to Earth, he devoted the rest of his life to studying the nature of human consciousness. And it's a theme that all four of you touched on to varying degrees at some point during the mission. And so my question is, now that you've been back on Earth for just a few days and had a little bit of time to sit with it, do any of you feel as though you had an experience similar to what Mitchell described, this sense of universal connectedness? And did you experience somehow a shift in consciousness somehow? Thanks.
Yes. Chris, it's a great question. I'll just the only thing I can do is just share one quick story. When I got back on the ship, I'm not really a religious person, but there was just no other avenue for me to explain anything or to experience anything. So I asked for the chaplain on the Navy ship to just come visit us for a minute. And when that man walked in, I'd never met him before in my life, but I saw the cross on his collar, and I broke down in tears. Like it's very hard to fully grasp what we just went through. And in these short, you just said it's been a week since we've been back, but it's been a week of medical testing, physical testing, doctors, science objectives. We have not had that decompression. We have not had that reflection time. So I'm basing this on what we saw. And when the sun eclipsed behind the moon, I think all four of us, I turned to Victor and I said, I don't think humanity has evolved to the point of being able to comprehend what we are looking at right now, because it was otherworldly and it was amazing.
The only thing I would add is that beautiful thing. First of all, thank you for sharing that. That was a really special moment. I was in the bed right across when the chaplain came in, and the only thing I would add is I am a religious person, but everything else is the same. There is something in there, and as we start to process, I'll have to tell you next week, but haven't had a chance to really unpack it all yet.
I don't know. I don't have an answer. And I'm just going to be it feels uncomfortable to say it, but I don't know, but I'm very intrigued. And this is the topic that I want to dive much deeper on. For those that don't know, Edgar Mitchell was this Apollo 14 astronaut who had this profound experience on the journey home from the moon. It was, many people have put the word spiritual awakening into his mouth. He never said those words. He described it as a profound feeling of universal connectedness. But as soon as he got back to Earth, he left NASA and founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Yeah.
And I have been so intrigued by that journey. Essentially, it's all about studying the nature of human consciousness, awareness, and as we've kind of talked about, a lot of these things, of course, play into UFOs and UAPs. What propels these crafts? Could it be consciousness? All those types of questions. And so I was reading this book during the mission, the Way of the Explorer that Edgar Mitchell wrote. And this was one of those questions that I was actually nervous to ask, because it's not, you're in a room with a bunch of space journalists who I know are going to ask very technical questions, and those are really important questions. And, the kind of question that I asked is not the right stuff from the Mercury astronaut days and the Gemini days. That's a question that would get you laughed out of the room. And so, yeah, I felt those nerves yesterday, but it was the question that I wanted to ask. And so I went for it, and I really appreciated the astronauts' response, that they answered it decisively. Reed Weissman said yes, and that he felt like he had experienced some kind of shift in consciousness. And then Victor Glover said, I agree with what Reed said, but I can't say anything more because I'm still processing it. And so, yeah, I hope I answered that question. Did I?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, again,
Okay,
people, they should go watch your video to see the astronauts' responses, because they were surprising. I mean, you had one astronaut who was not religious, but the first thing he saw was like a priest or something like that. I forget. And he saw the cross, and it just brought him to tears. And then, you've got Glover, who is religious, and it only strengthened kind of his faith and all that. And he's still processing it all. And that's got to be interesting too. I always go back to, I was born and raised Roman Catholic. And I remember going to confession as a kid. I was probably 12 maybe. And I went to confession and I asked the priest, is it okay that I believe in aliens? Because I had already gotten into it. I
Really?
Yeah, I've been doing this.
What did he say?
For a long time. He said, I was like, is this okay in my faith to believe in aliens and look into UFOs? And there was a uncomfortably long pause. And he was probably like, what is happening right now? Like,
Wait, how old are you here? I'm trying to visualize this.
I was either like 12 and a half or 13. And mind you, like I was an altar boy. So he knew my voice. But he never knew I was into all that stuff. And he can't be like, Ryan, is that you? You know what I mean? It's confession. It's like this, sort of important thing. And he just took that really long pause and he was like, totally, man. Like, you should believe in more out there because it only makes the power of God stronger to know he's created all these worlds and all these beings and all that. And again, like that's a religious angle to it. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, cool. Okay. So it's okay for me to like believe in these things. And I think that's important because the topic of UFOs always gets lumped into religion as a belief system, but I choose not to believe in any of it and just let it happen.
Well, in another similarity, I think right now between the UFO beat and the space exploration beat is that they're both talking about these things is becoming less taboo, right? Talking about UFOs, much more mainstream. Talking to astronauts about consciousness also become like, I don't know why I was so nervous or worried about it. People were like, great question. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that, Victor Glover's talking about mental health at this press conference. And the fact that so much of this mission was not about the technical or the rocket science or the engineering prowess. It was the human moments that really penetrated. That is not the right stuff of the Apollo generation. And so it really does feel different. And I just think it's so fascinating that you're seeing kind of all these taboos and norms come down on across all the beats that I cover.
Right. And I think that's why this mission resonated with people so much. It was very human as well. I love that. Kristin. Oh, this is cool. So Megan Medic, she is of the Reality Check podcast with Ross Coulthard over at News Nation.
Love them.
She's great. She was on the show a couple months ago.
So good.
They're doing great work. She also hosts a new podcast called the Uncommon Sense Podcast. Shout out, Megan. I put a little plug in there. She asked over on X, what is the single strongest piece of evidence you would give to a moon mission skeptic?
Ooh.
There's a lot of them out there.
Oh, there are. Man, single biggest. I'm going to be a real asshole and give like 2. But okay, first, well, this isn't like hard scientific evidence, right? But this is the thing I always think about that I love to raise in points with moon landing deniers. And that is, if the United States did not land back on the moon back in the 60s and 70s, then certainly Russia would have done whatever they could to prove the Americans wrong and be like, they're lying. Like, they didn't win the space race. Like, and that's never happened. Same with China. Like, all of our adversaries would benefit immensely from somehow proving that it never happened. And yet that's never happened. So that's the point I always jump to first. But in terms of like science and hard evidence, I mean, first we've got actual samples of moon rocks and regolith and dust that were brought back to Earth. And these aren't just kept in a NASA warehouse and facility. They were shared with, I think, about 50 different countries, and independent scientists independently reviewed them. And I mean, surely one of them would come out and be like, this is bullshit. This isn't real.
Yeah.
And finally, the LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, multiple nations have satellites that have orbited the Earth, orbited the moon, seen the moon, and they all take pictures of actual artifacts from the Apollo missions that are on the moon. You can see them. So I'm sorry, Megan. I went to 3. You really got me off on a tangent there.
No, I think it's good.
I'll leave it
Yeah.
there. Those are my 3 points.
Okay, fair enough. And like even while watching the most recent launch and flyby, you had people saying that's fake, the images are fake, that's fake. And I always go back to that Buzz Aldrin punching the journalist in
Oh,
the
I
face.
know.
And that was a collective punch for all of us out there. Like that dude deserved it.
That
because-
was years. That had been building in Buzz for years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And he was right to do it because these
He's
people
like, you know what?
sacrifice so much. They sacrifice so much to like further science and further humanity. And to hear people just like try to make it all into a big conspiracy, it disheartens my heart as someone who battles conspiracy theory on a daily basis with this topic.
Yeah.
I mean, the term UFO is like banned on YouTube. You try to put that hashtag in your videos and you can bet like people aren't gonna
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll give you that little word of advice.
Wait,
Don't
can
put,
I get some tips?
don't put UFO, don't put UFOs.
What about aliens?
Aliens is good, UAP is good, because those have been approved. I don't know, Kristin. I'm probably talking out of my ass here, but like I will tell you, if you go
I'm gonna get
use,
some packaging tips from you.
I'll try. Yeah, try. Like next time you put a UFO video up, try to use the hashtag UFO. It doesn't even pop up anymore. Like usually it'll say how many videos are on YouTube when you put in a hashtag of that hashtag. Can't even do UFO anymore. Back during like the COVID days when conspiracy theory was kind of running rampant across the internet, YouTube took a real firm stance on like, all right, we're going to stop kind of promoting certain types of conspiracy theory videos. And we got lumped into that in the UFO field, unfortunately. So,
yeah. Well, one of my first videos that did really well was one where I was talking about how it was when Eric Davis had been on Capitol Hill, not at a hearing, but a briefing. And I think he was speaking to Burleson. And he was talking about the 4 types of, extraterrestrial beings.
Yeah.
Anyway, he used the word reptilians. And so I used the word reptilians. And that, if you look at that video, it's flagged. There's like a Wikipedia, like a community note on it. That was my first sort of taste of, what do you want to call it? Censorship?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, welcome to the family. You're one
welcome
of us.
to the party.
No, yeah, for sure. Yep, run away from the reptilian thing too, for sure. Another word of advice. Okay, I've got one more listener question, and then I promise we'll wrap this up. With one more.
We're good. Let's
question.
do it.
Okay. Thank you for your time. This one comes from Fiery Jack. I love that. Fiery Jack on X.
Ooh, Fiery
asks,
Jack.
Yeah. Let's see if he's fiery here. Do you think UAPs monitor space launches? And were there any UAP sightings during the Artemis launch, to your knowledge? Do you think they're like keeping an eye on us? Whatever they are.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. I don't know. Is the honest answer. I mean, if they're monitoring our nuclear bases and nuclear facilities, then yeah, I mean, I would probably be monitoring our space launches and certainly SpaceX's Starbase in Boca Chica, or now Starbase, Texas. But do I know of anything? Do I have any firsthand experience or knowledge of UAP sightings around the Artemis II launch or mission? No. But if I had gotten a second question at that press conference, I would have loved to have asked that. But again, that's, it's the astronauts are a tricky bunch, when it comes to these types of questions. Some will go there, some won't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you can't fault them for that. Like, it's their personal experiences, and take that what you will. But like we mentioned earlier, there are so many astronauts, dozens and dozens, who said they saw weird stuff up there. There could be prosaic explanations, but for every one of those, there's going to be one that remains anomalous. And that goes for seeing stuff on the ground too. I think Gordon Cooper had like a crazy UFO sighting back when he was in the Air Force, and they took like video, and the video got confiscated. Like it's crazy, some of this stuff for sure when it comes to
Yeah, well, and I mean, I don't need to tell you or probably any of your viewers about the perils of stigma, right? But that stigma that pervades the U.S. military and the Air Force and the Navy, it is intense in the astronaut corps as well, because especially, back in the Apollo, Mercury, Gemini days, that could, if you spoke out, that cost you your dream. That'd cost you your space flight, So who's gonna talk and speak out about that?
Right. Exactly. You mentioned this kind of what would you even call it? Like this wall, this barrier between the UFO community and like the space community. And NASA did a UAP study, and of course the UFO community was like, NASA lies about everything. Like, don't believe them. They airbrush all their photos and videos, blah, 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 blah. That's one thing. And that's like, we could unpack that in a whole hour-long conversation. But the one I kind of want to know from you is ARROW, the literal official Pentagon UFO office. The UFO community does not like these people, which is hilarious because we strive for the government to get involved and study these things. And then when they do, the UFO community hates their answers when ultimately there are some to these videos and stuff. So, I'm trying to bridge that gap as you are and talking. I'm in touch with someone at ARROW who I'm hoping to have come on the show and like plead their case,
That's
give
great.
us their side of all of this.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that kind of like aggressive nature between believers and I guess skeptics or debunkers or yeah.
I mean, it's probably inevitable, right? But it makes everything so much harder. I can only speak from my own personal experience with ARROW and trying to get answers. And it's tough, man, right? Like it's really tough. It shouldn't be this tough.
Good point.
And there's just certain people in the press office that people know well. I'm not going to name any names right now, but that they don't have to be so short. They could give more. They could be a little more polite. If your job is to be a press wrangler or just issue statements, like it's very clear that at least there are some very high people there who just don't want to share what they know or are actively trying to keep people like you and me from knowing what they know. And so, that's just my own personal experience. And I commend you if you're able to get somebody from ARROW on your podcast. And then just look at, people on Capitol Hill, members of Congress who are trying to get answers from ARROW as well. I mean, something I am just a firm believer that if any information, if we're ever going to get to what the goal is, and the goal is the truth, then it needs to be an entity other than ARROW. It needs to be an entity that has the power to go above ARROW. And that's my opinion.
Love it. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Get the public more involved, I think, too, would be really good.
It all comes down to Trump, right?
Yeah.
It comes down, I in so many ways, I really think this moment, and I know I'm not saying anything that most people haven't already said or thought, but it really comes down to Trump, to J.D. Vance, to Tulsi Gabbard, to Pete Hegseth. Are these people going to do the right thing and push to disclose what they can in a responsible way? I think that's going to be the deciding factor for this moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Swipe of a pen. Like a lot of this could be kind of answered, but they have their reasons. We understand in the UFO community national
What
security.
are the well, yeah, but
Yeah. No, that
I mean,
is
yes, okay.
that's a good
National
question.
security, that's good, but like certain people in the administration said as soon as they got in there that they would do a deep dive on this topic, and now how many, we're a year and some change into it, and no deep dive by this person has been done. So,
It's a good point. It used to be that excuse of like the public couldn't handle it, and we don't want to like people being all like crazy and mass hysteria, and like if we told them, I don't believe that. Look at what the world has been through, both good and bad. We're resilient creatures. We can accept a lot, integrate that into our lives, and move on. We still have to go to work, pay bills, eat, support our families, do all that stuff. Like, you tell us aliens are real, yeah, there's going to be some like, kind of hard questions after that, but we'll go on. Like, so I don't believe that excuse anymore of keeping,
Yeah.
if there is a cover up, silent. But yeah, again, conversation for another time.
Just by studying human nature, right? It probably has a lot more to do with power and money.
Yes. Yep. It always does. It
Right?
always does.
I mean, is it power and money, or is it making, the masses and humanity not freak out? I'm gonna go with power and money.
Yep. That scale. It's always tipping. I know. With all the work you're doing with your YouTube channel, again, we'll link to everything. And your dive into the UFO world and these decades with your incredible parents and doing everything you've done. Where do you personally stand on these big questions in life when it comes to UFOs, aliens? Like, yeah, that's just as simple as I can put it. What do you think? What do you think about UFOs? There we go. There's our.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they are, but I know it's something. And I know that we're being lied to. And I know that there's been a cover up. And I believe that humans have a right to know. It is our birthright. Whatever it is, whatever the government knows about this topic, it is our birthright to know. And I, along with everybody else who has, spent far more time digging into this topic than I have, I think it is our duty to do whatever we can to get to that truth. And so we were talking about getting comfortable with saying, I don't know, I don't have the answers. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I know we're not being told the truth, the full truth. Right?
Yeah.
So, and if you want to really fully answer your question in terms of, I mean, of course, I think there's other life in the universe. Somebody with my background, I almost think that goes without saying. I believe there is life elsewhere. Whether there are, interdimensional beings, extraterrestrial beings, humans from the future, humans from the past, humans of some mutation underwater base. I don't know, but I'm curious as all hell, and this is a topic that I want to spend the rest of my life covering.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's where I'm at too. And it's given my life purpose and meaning. And, maybe it all turns out not to be anything. But at the end of the day, like, I do believe there is a core mystery going on. And that's why I've dedicated my life to this topic. And it's made me feel like I've done something and contributed to a huge conversation, that it will never be over.
Yep. Well, and at the very least, right? The very least, this is a national security threat. The US government has publicly said this is a we don't know what these things are, and pilots have had close calls, and it's a national security threat, also a danger to some pilots, But then when you just, pick a little more, you realize that's just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So, I think it's much, much deeper than that. And as I said, I think it's our birthright as conscious creatures to learn about our full powers and learn about what else might be out there in the universe.
Kristin, you have inspired me to go outside and look up. It's that simple. Like I tell people all the time, just go outside, look up. You will be amazed at what you can see up there. Our astronauts just did it. You're interviewing people every day who have done it. And again, I think that says more than we could ever hope for. And I'm thankful for what you're doing. I think it's incredibly important. And that's going to be my last question for you. Where can we find everything you're up to, and what comes next for you?
You can find all of my work on The Endless Void with Kristin Fisher on YouTube. I also post on X and Instagram, but I mean, YouTube's really where it's at, right? I think in this day and age, if you're creating video and you're serious about creating high quality video, YouTube's where it's at. And what a cool moment to be at for a video journalist and content creator, to where you don't need the infrastructure of a mainstream media big corporation to do this. I mean, it's a really cool time to be creating content. So as you know, it's really hard to do these things. It does take time and money and stress and lack of sleep. So I really appreciate everybody that watches and kind of encourages me to keep going down this path. And thank you, Ryan, for all that you've done, and for all the people like you who have, blazed the trail to help bring a lot of these topics more into the mainstream, and kind of pave the way for people like me who were in that world to come over here. So it's been a true pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, thank you. All hands on deck. I always say that. So no, we have you to thank, and we're happy to have you along for the journey, Kristin. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ryan.